All right, as I mentioned, this will be recorded so that we can share with people who were not here. Also will be posted on our YouTube channel. So if you're not comfortable with that, you can keep your camera off, but we do hope that people will engage with us in conversation at the end. So I'm very excited today that we have our event on gift giving practices in Japan with Dr. Mary Eberhardinger. She has also let us know that if you would like to purchase her book, you can get a discount from the publisher for joining us at this event with 30% off. I've just put that in the chat and it's also up on the screen. Now, before I introduce Mary, so got one more. Before I introduce Mary, I would like to tell you a little bit about US Jet A. If you're not familiar with US Jet AA, we're the US Jet Program Alumni Association, and we work to further US-Japan relations by supporting the network of Jet alumni in the United States. If you are here today and you are a Jet and are not yet a member, please become a member of US Jet AA. We have a brand new, very exciting new member portal. If you are a member of US Jet AA and you haven't checked out the new member portal, please check it out. You'll need to reset your password the first time you log into that portal. And if you're not a Jet and would like to support programs like this, please consider a donation to help support these initiatives. All right, now we will go ahead and I would like to introduce Mary, Dr. Eberhardinger. She was an ALT assistant language teacher with the JET program in Hyogo from 2008 to 2010, and is currently a part-time lecturer at CMU, Carnegie Mellon University, and Central Washington University. She recently published a book on the rhetoric and philosophy of gifts, and today she will share some of her research with us as it centers on Japan. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Mary. I will spotlight you for everybody. And then I also would like everyone to know that if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll try to get to them as we go through, but we'll also have opportunity for questions and discussion at the end. All right, Mary, go ahead.
Okay, great. Can everyone see me? Is it? Okay, excellent. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So happy you're here. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Bahia for inviting me to give a talk about my book. I'm so happy to share my passion with you all as it relates to Japan. So let me begin by mentioning, well, what the heck is JET? So there are some JET people here and there are some non-JET people here. And JET is the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. A lot of people get that wrong and they think it means the Japan English teaching program, but that E is really important, exchange. And GIFT is all about exchange. So I'm here to talk about some angles on GIFT, definition of GIFT, and how it really made at least my experience so much better in Japan. I really feel that GIFT is one of the only effective forms of intercultural communication, I would say, available to us in a world that's fraught and in terms of international friendship. So I will take a public diplomacy angle on GIFT, that intercultural communication angle on GIFT, a soft power angle on GIFT. I'll talk a little bit about Vladimir Putin receiving a gift from Japan, some occasions that people give gifts in Japan, and a little interdisciplinary angle about communication and philosophy as all that really comes together to offer this presentation to you all. So gift is really anything that is given. Anything that is given, and that really opens the floodgates for, we might think of objects, you can think of giving time, giving energy, even giving space. So I really want to open it up and just say, well, what is the definition of gift? It's really anything that is given. And so that's one definition to kind of push off of right away. Now, another definition coming from Jacques Derrida, and the book is Given Time, Counterfeit Money. He says that a gift is actually impossible to give. And this is very interesting counter perspective, because he thinks that to give anything is to automatically enter an economic exchange of reciprocity. So what's interesting about the cover of this book is you've got two gentlemen. One is giving counterfeit money, and then in the other hand is automatically giving something back. And so it's not just a freely given gift. And that's what Derrida's angle is all about, which is whenever you give something, that enters a cycle of credit, debt, and it goes on and on, that cycle of give, credit, debt, give, credit, debt, on and on. And so he says that if you label something as gift as such, the rhetoric of the naming, then you are trapped. You're kind of trapped in this economically related cycle. So I just want to start off right off the bat with some definitions, a counter definition of gift. And anyway, that's kind of an existential French angle that we may not buy or accept, and that's what my book is all about, is synthesizing perspectives on gift. And so that's just coming at it with some different angles there. But this is important in any exchange. Any exchange is remembering who gave you the gift, the name of the person who gave you the gift, and what you might do in return one day. So that is the thing right there, is he calls it, there's an impossibility with gift. And so I do take, a more optimistic tone in the book. It's not all doom and gloom. And that's what some of the, honestly, postmodern deconstructural philosophers do, is they kind of apply pressure to the wound, but the wound is still there, if you know what I'm saying. So that kind of a post-structuralist take, but I really want to talk about Japan. My book is motivated by the JET experience in Japan. Let me screen share. I have several screen shares. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. I have several screen shares today. So with that said, I'm going to show you the table of contents. So here are the chapters of my book. And so, this is my dissertation work. And I really think that, and it was adapted into the book, as you guys know, going overseas, doing JET, the Japan Exchange Teaching Program, or if you go overseas for another reason, you carry that life experience back and choose to do something with it. And I really encourage people to try to do this in some kind of way, because the writing will get done. The writing will start writing itself if you choose a topic that you really like. And so carrying that life experience for me from JET into what became kind of a grad school direction, I just kind of ran with it. So here are my chapters. When people think of gift, they think of objects as gift. Now there's also the linguistic angle, or language as gift. There's life and death as gifts. There's the possibility of gift. And that responds to what I was talking about earlier with the impossibility of a gift freely given and freely received, right? Chapter 5 is kind of the Japan related chapter. It's about gifts, public diplomacy, and soft power. And I'm going to dive into that in more detail, of course, for this talk. Chapter 6, we've got occasions, times and places when it's expected to give and to say thank you. And then my last chapter, I arrive at what I call an anachronistic giving. And that is arriving to the idea that gifts, a genuine opportunity to give, is out of time, out of place. It's not on someone's birthday. It's not on someone's anniversary. Or, of course you want to be polite and do that, but understanding those rare and opportune moments to give is the anachronistic giving that I arrive at the very end of the book. And I think that those make life all the much better. And so, yeah, we give gifts on the routine times of the year, but we really, chapter 7 is about looking out for those opportune moments. And you may not even sign the gift. This is a Native American perspective, by the way. Is it an anonymous gift? Okay, so those are the chapter breakdown for you. And why don't we just kind of dive in with, I want to start with soft power. So one of the kind of influences, there's a lot of influences going into the book and kind of making sense of the Japan experience and putting it into a dissertation. So Joseph Nye is the guy who coined the term soft power. He is coming from the Harvard Kennedy School of Public Diplomacy. And so I spent some time kind of digging into the literature. And really, my book is a synthesis of literature on perspectives there. So soft power is that contrary to hard power. Joseph Nye would say that we need both. We need soft and hard power together. And with gift, it is a pinnacle example of soft power at play. And so with that said, I want to share with you an example of this very cute dog named Yume. In 2012, the government of Japan gifted Vladimir Putin with this Akita Inu dog, and he happily received it. And for the first time in a long time, the Japanese were delighted to see a smile on Vladimir Putin's face. And so this really has a lot of political underpinnings, as you might tell, puppy diplomacy or dog diplomacy. It had to do with the islands dispute. So let's see here. Let me just share another thing. I just want to show you next thing here. Let's see here. It's important to see the map of Japan. Okay, map of Japan right there. All right. Russia is very close to Japan, as you guys know. Up there in the north is where Akita Inu dogs supposedly derived from. And there are some islands up there between Russia and the northern part of Japan, of Hokkaido Prefecture. And there's been an ongoing kind of diplomatic tension between the two countries over, whose territory it is. And so anyway, getting back to that dog, the soft power of this amazing little dog, it like softened the relations, and the Japanese were again delighted to see this happening. There you go. He's got a lot of dogs, and the world kind of took cue and said, we better give this guy dogs because this is working. So the Japanese said, this is symbolic to smooth waters ahead, to smooth negotiation waters ahead. And so that is that right there. Now, here's the thing with just one more thing on Putin. So the Japanese were so delighted that they tried to do this again. And so in 2016, they said, hey, you need a second dog, another Akita Inu, and this time a companion. And so there's our lovely Yume, little grown up. But here's the thing, Putin said no. He said, no, thank you. And this rejection of gift was a bit of a shock. It was a bit of a disrespect. It was a bit impolite. It was a bit of a breach, and really take the power back. You're taking that power back because the person who has the power to give, if you want to view it this way, is the person in control of the situation and the exchange. To be in the vulnerable position to receive means that you are kind of allowing this person into your life in some kind of way. So you see how we can think about this politically. Vladimir Putin said, "No, I've got enough dogs, and I don't want my dogs reproducing. I don't want more dogs." And so the Japanese were like, "Okay, this is signaling some kind of rocky negotiation waters in the future." So let me go ahead and pause. And Bahia, do we have any kind of comments or questions so far?
No, we haven't had any questions come in so far, but just as a reminder to everybody, if you do have questions as we're going, please put them in the chat, and I will let Mary know, and we'll incorporate them.
Awesome. You know, when gifts are given in Japan, some things that are really important about that practice is the presentation of the gift. And so this thing, does anyone know what this thing right here is? So sometimes the outer presentation of the gift, this is a Furoshiki. It is a beautiful piece of cloth. It's double-sided. And you can wrap any gift up in this piece of cloth. The philosophy behind the Furoshiki is that when you present something neatly, almost like an origami, the folding, you got to take time with the presentation of the gift. It shows consideration, it shows politeness, it shows respect and regard, and it is completely other-centered. That the practice of giving gift in Japan is one of the most other-centered experiences I have ever encountered. And I love to kind of share and bring this back to the United States. And so with Furoshiki, when you wrap anything up and you give it in this kind of way, part of the expectation with that practice of gift is that you give something back. You return the favor, you reciprocate with the same furoshiki, with the same piece of cloth. And so that, goes back to that idea that give and take, give and receive, that it's not just a free giving without, you don't just forget about it. Now you have that cloth in your house and in your hand, and you better do something with it, right? That is part of the face. That is part of the face saving and maintaining and structuring that is embedded in the event and the practice of the gift. So this is something I learned in JET and in Japan was this, and it made it so much better, because when you're in Japan doing JET, for some of us do it for 5 years, I did it for 2, it makes it better. It's kind of hard to be away from home for so long and you get homesick. Gift makes things better. I've lived in different countries and different cities and different states, and that gesture of the gift is something that I think is one of the only things we have left in terms of intercultural communication and public diplomacy. So
Mary, we do have some comments and questions that I'd like to get to. Okay. So first, I'm really glad you brought Furoshiki. I just had my 40th birthday, and my best friend gave me a gift wrapped in a Furoshiki because we both had Japan connection. So I actually never realized that you were supposed to then, if you give a gift to that person later, keep the same cloth and use it again. So that was really interesting. Even living in Japan for 3 years, I never realized that.
yes.
So we got one comment from Jesse. They say, "I'm tickled by the idea of hundreds of dogs descending on Putin. On a serious note, novelty seems to be a proxy for sincerity. People always seem to want a gift that they haven't received before." And I was wondering if you have any thoughts about his comment.
Awesome, Jesse. Great to see you. Love your comment. Novelty with the event of the gift is just one more time. Can you articulate just the latter part of that question for everybody?
Yes, novelty seems to be a proxy for sincerity. People always seem to want a gift they haven't received before. And it isn't so much a question as a comment, but I thought you might have some thoughts about it.
Yeah, great. Jesse, in Japan or in the US or just universally? just let me see what he says here. Because Jesse, as you know, let me, this is, I'm kind of reading the chat here. So with novelty, here's where my thoughts go to. Well, let me see. Let me see here. Okay.
So I guess Jesse was not specifically asking in Japan or the US, but just in a more, or that was a more general comment. I mean, certainly I think with the case of the Shiba Inu, that did seem like a novel gift for Putin, although they were not the only one to give him a dog.
I think it's an excellent point. And like, yeah, the world took cue and was like, we better start giving this guy dogs, just because, and you know what? And the world started to name him as Alpha Dog, like in the political sphere. Novelty with gift giving is an excellent point that you make. It reminds me of growing up in households where for Christmas time, there's this weird competition over who makes grandma cry first with the Christmas gift. Like who has the best gift, and remember that names are rhetorically attached to the gift. Credit is rhetorically attached to the event of the gift. Unless we let all that go, we let the face go, the credit go, the naming go, and we do something anonymous. Novelty with gift giving absolutely is a very thoughtful way to think about, we better give something that the person actually likes and represents their personality. From a Marxist angle, he would say that what we do in a consumerist society, in a capitalist society, is we give gifts that we like. We give gifts that we like. And so, you know, the gift of a candle, I was about to pick up a candle, the gift of a candle, the gift of like undergarments, just, and so let me share an idea here. I want to bleed into some of the specific times of the year that people in Japan give. So there are 2 times in the year. Actually, there's many times in the year. I mean, it's kind of an ongoing phenomenon, an ongoing event. We're all very familiar with the term omiyage. Well, maybe some of us aren't, but omiyage is a Japanese word for little gifts, souvenirs, things that represent your hometown, a form of intercultural communication. So there's something called osebo, and then there's ochugen. Osebo and ochugen, and you're going to notice, so osebo is at the end of the year, a winter time, a winter season giving, whereas ochugen giving practice is in the summer. Now, take a look at these, like the presentation, the wrapping, the meticulousness, the neatness and organization. So back to Jesse's comment, sometimes those omiyage and sometimes those ochugen and osebo are a bit generic. As you can see, it's just kind of packaged. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's a wonderful gesture, usually, unless it's a manipulative gesture, unless it's a power move, unless it's, I want something from you politically, and let me give you something. You see, there's different angles to take here with gift, but sometimes it's not very novel. And it's just kind of routine and expected to give everyone in the workplace a little wrapped trinket. But novelty is a nice angle to take. So let me pause and see if there's any other response.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up omiyage, because Jesse put that in the comment, that thinking about these omiyage kiosks, that where the omiyage is, it's not unique to almost by design, right? Every prefecture, every region has something that is significant to that area, and the omiyage represents that. And so it's not meant to be unique or novel. We did have a slightly different comment that I wanted to get to from Rachel. So she asks, are there only 2 options with gifts, to accept and reject? What are the other options? And there was a little bit of discussion. Jesse mentioned there might be variations to rejection, accepting your gift and then regifting the gift. And is that usually understood, or is that a Western thing? Jesse also comments, I wonder if the practice of giving a more extravagant gift in return could be a form of rejection. So do you have any thoughts on that? Like, what are your options when you are offered a gift, and what are the nuances of accepting or rejecting a gift?
Okay. So great to see you, Rachel. Thank you for your question. Rachel's a Duquesne colleague from Duquesne University, the Rhetoric PhD program, and Jesse is a colleague from JET. So Rachel's getting at the question, are there only two ways? You either accept or reject. Wow, that it is a thoughtful question. I haven't thought of it that way. We think, with giving and receiving that. I kind of want to throw it back at Rachel. She's my classmate from Duquesne, and we both did a philosophy of communication program in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Can I throw it back at Rachel? And what do you think?
Sure. Here, Rachel,
Are there only two options for the event of the gift? You either accept or reject. Anyone else is free to.
I'm trying to work through that, actually. Somewhat on in my dissertation here, because I'm writing on heirlooms, and the idea of people feel maybe guilty, and I'm kind of talking about the there's an ethical angle that you are responsible. So there's the idea with inalienable objects that you might, I might flip this, but you might own it at a particular time, but you are not the exclusive possessor of it. So perhaps it's like that in Japan culture as well, where I might have this right now, but ultimately this needs to be passed on. This needs to go forward, and particularly I think within the realm of heirlooms. But I mean, again, like with Jesse, with what he's saying about regifting, that's still rejection, right? Unless, I guess, of course, in the sense that you feel that your time is up with that. I mean, I guess particularly I'm talking about objects, and I'm sorry, I'm thinking in terms of I'm stuck in my work right now. So I'll just leave with that.
Yeah. So your dissertation work is getting into family heirlooms and passing them down, and understanding that there to invoke Dr. Fritz, you are a steward of the object for a finite time. There is a stewardship to respecting and revering an object, and wow, I mean, there's a temporal quality to, and an existential quality to the heirloom as gift. I love your topic. I'm excited to talk with you more about your topic, but yeah, those words pop up for me. There's a temporality to the heirloom gift. There's an existentiality to the heirloom gift, and there's a memorialization, memory. You know all this. I don't have to tell you this. Anyway, good. Yeah.
There was one more thing I was thinking is I've come across the kind of the environmental angle of it, right? So, we're mass consumers, but might we think of, perhaps you know some about new materialism, which kind of almost takes it, some people think, a little too far, with, it's kind of almost like a personification, anthropomorphism, where you're looking at, you're almost, you can't equate human life with the life of a coffee mug or something. But there's the idea of perhaps if we give objects more meaning, then we won't be so willing to just cast them off, right? Like I've read about, I'm sure you guys are familiar, Marie, what's her name?
Marie Kondo.
Thank you, Marie
The
Kondo.
KonMari method.
Yes. And I've read a book about how, let's look at it at the other end. People are more proud of taking pictures of their heaps of garbage bags and things that they've cast off than they are necessarily, concerned about what they're doing, almost like environmentally. I just want to throw that out too, because I think that's an interesting angle. And you think about that, like, in terms of gifts as well. It's like, is purging, we feel good about purging, but is that always, especially when it comes to gifts, is there an unethical element to that?
Yes.
I think that's such an interesting point. And I actually have two questions for you. Bringing up Marie Kondo makes a lot of sense. And one of the things, since I guess I'm gathering that heirlooms is your area of research, one thing that Marie Kondo says in her book is, basically don't give your stuff to your family. Like, you want to get rid of things and you're trying to unburden yourself. Don't just take this item and give it to somebody. In that sense, when you're gifting something to get rid of an item, it's very different, I think, than, giving a gift to give a gift. And, in the context of, heirlooms, I'd love your thoughts on, what exactly makes something an heirloom? Is it just the emotional connection that it is a significant family thing? Does the heirloom have to have value, like monetary value, or can something be considered an heirloom even if it is, monetarily worth nothing?
Yes. I mean, I mentioned this to Mary, that my topic really grew out of cleaning out my grandparents' house. They moved there in 1967 and grandma never threw anything away. Now that was very overwhelming in some regard. And it was, there was no organized chaos either. It was just like grandma kept everything. And so I had to go through everything very meticulously, because I found money, I found jewelry, and they were in the same drawer as swimsuits from when I was 10, and coloring pages. I mean, there was no rhyme or reason. But I think that it was a question that I've been looking at too, because was I giving away things that grandma wanted me to keep, and was I keeping other things that grandma was like, why would you want that? And I wished they had still been around so that I could ask them that. And I think that that's something, obviously, Mary and I, coming from the Rhetoric and Philosophy of Communication department and perspective, that's something that I am encouraging, the communication of that. I think sometimes maybe people give gifts, Mary, and they don't qualify it. They don't explain it. And, so then people don't even understand maybe the value of it, or what this, like, oh, she gave me this crummy whatever. And like, no, there was so much more to it, but that wasn't explained.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Thank you so much, Rachel. I kind of want to turn back to the Japan connection. We got some great comments about Omiage in the chat, and the idea that, which reminded me about how when I was going to Japan on jet, you're told to bring Omiage, and you're kind of like, what is this thing that you're probably not very familiar with, and you're scrambling to figure out, what to bring. And so both Alana and Jesse were discussing, trying to figure out, like, the stress of being in a new jet and trying to figure out what items you're going to bring and what omiyage to bring, because you want to bring something that illustrates, your hometown or your country, but we don't have the same, omiyage doesn't really exist in the Western context in the same way that it does in Japan. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Omiyage, during the jet training, they tell us you better come armed with at least 10 individually wrapped trinkets that represent your hometown and are allergy free. And like, you're essentially preparing to give gifts to strangers that you've never met. And and you do what you can, you do your best, you pack your suitcase with as many trinkets as you can fit. I had my mother ship me things from Costco, like candies. But this is part of the fruitful experience of communication. So yes, omiyage is important. It's part of face, it's part of smooth relations, it's part of diffusing the beginning of a new relationship, whether that's professional, romantic, your next door neighbor. So having a lot of different, not a variety, but having plenty of gifts ready to give is something that I took pretty seriously, and that the JET program, as you guys know, stresses in the training. Now, we don't want to like stress you out about it. We don't want you to be like, oh no, I'm running out of gifts and money. That can happen too. But it's such an important part of the culture that and I just kind of grabbed this topic and ran with it. There's something called giri like giving in Valentine's Day context is just chocolates. And so you really got to think about what little object will make an impression, will prove the message, and remembering that gift is communication. Gift is nonverbal communication. Gift is expressing the inexpressible. It is doing language that we don't have the words to utter. Think about romance, think about love, think about friendship, think about funerals, think about the occasions. We don't know what to say. We don't know what to say all the time. There is nothing to say sometimes. Gift fills in that gap. Gift helps bridge that communication. Gift transcends linguistic barriers. You guys know this, but I'm trying to really blend in an interdisciplinary way the Japan piece and then the rhetoric and philosophy piece, because philosophy of communication will tell us that communication is imperfect. It is a bunch of symbols, arbitrary symbols that we assign meaning to. And so language is always imperfect. The English language, the Japanese language, any lexicon is just a representation of something semantic happening in our brains. Gift helps bridge linguistic barriers. It says what we can't say. Does that make sense? So, I mean, I'm just trying to break it down in a way that connects all these pieces, is why gift was really important in the JET program, for me at least. And then bringing those lessons learned back home and saying, how can I do gift here? I learned great things from Japan about gift, about omiyage, and how it smooths relationships and how it's rhetorically powerful. And what I mean by that is persuasively powerful. How do I bring that back here? And like, am I giving too much? Because I want to give to like new people I'm meeting and people at school. And am I being too nice? See, things you learn in Japan, you bring them back and you readjust. And sometimes there's reverse culture shock. Anyone want to comment on like gifting and how you bring, we're in the interaction part of this event, Bahia. So if we want to open it up more, maybe get Jessie in here. Lessons learned, and like how do you blend gift giving practices from Japan here in the States? How is that flowing for you or not flowing?
Yeah, so Jessie or Alana, you're both active in the chat. If you want to share, feel free to unmute yourself and come on the screen and chat with us. And of course, you don't have to, but feel free to come in.
You mean like gift giving in the States as opposed to Japan?
Yes. How do you blend? Do you blend that? Do you try to incorporate that in a mixed way, or do you just kind of do it the West, like Western etiquette with giving, and then Japan etiquette with what I would feel like over giving?
It's one of those things where I feel like, because I kind of like, I feel like I like came of age in Japan. And so there's certain things where I feel like there's aspects of American culture that I don't understand. And I feel like I have to ask an American. And I'm like, wait, I've spent most of my life in the United States. I only lived in Japan in my 20s. I should know this stuff. But anytime I travel somewhere, I automatically am looking, oh, what kind of omiyage should I get? What things like that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's a similar gut knee-jerk reaction, like when I want to say "otsukaresama deshita," and nobody knows what I mean, and it doesn't translate well. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. So it's a work in progress, but I definitely find myself wanting to do the small omiyage anytime I go somewhere, or if I'm visiting somebody. I feel like I don't know what the American thing to do is.
Great, great. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, you learn lessons and then you try to blend them. And like you said, it gets a little, you have to make choices of, but maybe just, I'm a fan of integrating and blending and doing both, doing Japan stuff here, bringing
Yeah.
American things over, that's the diplomatic exchange of visiting somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, if it ends up being a little bit odd, if I get a funny look, or if I'll just present it to them in a Japanese way with two hands and go, here we go, I learned this in Japan, and then it starts up a conversation, and I can tell them about, something about Japan. So oftentimes I think it comes off as, oh, that quirky Alana, she's been to Japan.
Okay.
In a good way, in a nice way, and people learn things they wouldn't have learned otherwise. So yay for grassroots cultural exchange.
So Mary, I have a question. Do you think gift giving is more significant in Japan in its role in the culture or society compared to American culture, or is it just different?
Great. Yeah. Good point. Good question. Do I think it's more significant? I think it can be more intentional. In Japan, there's more intention with the presentation and sometimes thoughtfulness, but sometimes just giddy, sometimes just getting it done. Which relates back to Rachel's point about ethics. If we're just giving out of guilt, that brings up questions of ethics and, well, just kind of a face thing, if you will. But I think it's both. Every country has practices and traditions of giving, and I tend to like the Japanese way. And yeah, sometimes it is more significant. What I found was sometimes there's a little more thoughtfulness, there's a little more other-centeredness, there's a little bit more thinking about the other, just in general, in my opinion. And so to answer your question, sometimes I'm biased leaning towards Japan, and doesn't mean I dislike the US way. So what do you think? What do you think, Bahia?
Well, I mean, there are situations in Japan where there's an obligation to give a gift that doesn't exist in the US. So, if I'm in the US and I'm traveling someplace, I don't feel obligated to find omiyage and bring it back to my friends and family or my coworkers. But in Japan, it feels rude if you go someplace and you don't bring back omiyage. So there's this obligation that is something that you do and that should be done. And I feel like gift giving is more formalized in Japan in terms of these are the circumstances and situations where a gift must be given or should be given. So with omiyage, when you travel, one example, and I'd love to hear people's thoughts about gifts that they maybe received in Japan, people who are on this call. But for example, when I got engaged in Japan, we got many gifts that were cups that match, like a set of cups. And that was just a thing that you give a set of things as a gift for the engagement. And that was something, you know, I don't think in the US there's any rule or common thing that you would necessarily give to somebody as an engagement gift. And so there were lots of circumstances like that in Japan, where Japanese people just know that on a certain situation, you give a certain type of gift, whether it's omiyage, whether it's engagement gift, or even going to a wedding and you're supposed to give money, and the money should be new bills, and it should not be evenly divisible by, you know, evenly divisible. You know, those are things that I had to learn in Japan because culturally it's so different here.
Yes. So again, the presentation of the gift, the appearance of the gift, the visuality of the gift, the visual rhetoric of the gift, if you will. So which relates to Japan as a high context culture, as a highly visual culture, using the eye over the ear. The eye trumps the ear, just kind of general. The reason I can even say any of this is because I have firsthand specific experience living there. If I did not, this would be largely stereotyping. I just wanted to mention that because people can make broad sweeping statements, but if you have that firsthand experience, I feel that you can speak about it. And so anyway, high context, low context culture, I'm just bringing it into the mix here, is we, if you buy into intercultural communication theory by Geert Hofstede, he would mention that we rely on the literalness, on the actual words and what's coming out of the mouth, the verbosity, and sometimes the vulgarity, the explicitness of language, versus you've got a high context culture that is relying more on the visuality of the appearance of an object being given. It communicates what otherwise cannot be communicated. So it takes on a greater emphasis in different cultures. And then you do start receiving all these different kinds of objects and gifts during occasions. And it's pleasant and it's wonderful. And it makes things friendlier. And that's, I think, you know, part of the theory and the purpose behind Gift in Japan is to smooth those waters, is to have that relational health between people, because Japan is a small country. So this idea of tatemae and honne is also embedded in the event of the gift, because it is a small country and people have to get along and learn how to cooperate smoothly. Gift is something that helps that. Gift facilitates and smooths a densely, you know, especially in the cities. So if that makes sense, thinking about space and density, and we all have to kind of smoothly get on this packed train together. So that's where etiquette and manners and gift and visual context come into play.
Yeah, well, Jesse had commented in the chat that, you know, gifts in Japan are foundational and frequent, right? It's part of this emphasis in Japan on sustaining your relationships in small ways, which I think really relates to what you were just saying. And also for those of you who are not Japan people, the honne and tatemae is like the public face and the inner face. I don't know, that's how I've always defined it. I don't know, Mary, if you have a better way to describe that.
Yeah. Can I share the screen again, or can I? Okay. Actually, I think I'm good with sharing for now. Okay, so tatemae, and is the screen on me, or I'm confused?
You probably are seeing yourself, but you're not spotlit. I'm seeing, if you change your view, you should be able to see everybody.
How to change the view?
There's usually a button in the top right of your screen that will say speaker or gallery view. Okay, yeah.
all good. What is tatemae and honne? So face, you hear me talk about face again and again during this talk. And face is not a bad word. Face is a respected word. So tatemae, as Bahia said, is that outer face. We're getting on the train, we're getting on the bus, we're entering someone's home for the first time, and we want to show good manners. We want to coexist peacefully with a lot of people in the same place at the same time. Honne is kind of regarded as that in your own house face, authentic, more honest. And that's how I, interpret the two words, at least. I mean, they're interpreted in a lot of different ways, but tatemae and honne are wonderful kind of Japanese words and concepts that point to why people might give in the first place. People might give out of a function of tatemae. Unless you know someone on a longer scale, long term, and you've spent years with them, maybe the giving is coming from a place of honne. So
one thing I always found interesting in Japan too, to go back to the Furoshiki you talked about, is, in Japan, you always give a gift either wrapped or in a bag. Usually the gift is wrapped and in a bag. And I thought that was very interesting compared to the US, because, I feel like we don't have any conventions like that of how a gift has to be presented.
We definitely have gift wrap here. We have bows and all that good stuff, but there's a different level, I feel, that with, as you're saying, with Furoshiki and the department store customer service, the excellence behind the customer service of wrapping the gift. There was a gift wrapping department like you may never see. I mean, we have gift wrapping departments here, but over there, it's just on a different level that is wonderful. It's a wonderful trait that you see. And again, it ties back to that visual culture. What you see matters more than what you're saying sometimes. So less is more with talking. Less is more with language. With Japanese language, we can sit here and talk about how one word means so many different things. So there's less words in a sentence. In a Japanese sentence, there's just less words. In an English sentence, you start having a run-on sentence. I don't know. I relate all this together with the visual and with less is more in a high context culture. There is that higher level of customer service with gifts. So,
So we have time for, I guess, one more question. I just wanted to remind everyone you can get a discount on Mary's book. I just put the discount code into the chat again. And the last question, Rachel asked if you can ask for the gifts you want in Japan. Like, do gift registries exist there the same way they do in the US?
Oh,
I actually don't know the answer to this question.
I'm not sure. I would think so. Well, do you know, Bahia? Do you know?
I do not know. I wonder, Jesse and Alana, whether you have any idea. I'm sure that, certainly with close friends, I mean, it does go back to the honne and tatemae. If you have a close friend, you can ask them, for what you want. And in terms of things like weddings, it's completely different in Japan because the expectation is to give money, not give a gift.
Very true.
And the other thing that I found surprising too is that when you go to a wedding in Japan, they give you a gift to take home. I have a lovely vase from my friend's wedding in Japan. So, that's not really the case so much in the US. And, giving money to a wedding only recently has become socially acceptable in the US.
Yeah, let me add to that if we have time, or we're at time. Just thinking very quickly off the top of my head, there's a very directness, there's a literalness, almost rudeness with registries. I mean, not rude, but that is very direct to say. I mean, I have looked at wedding registries that said, we're going to add an addition to our home. And if you donate to this fund, when we become married, that is direct. a direct reason. And so I don't know, in Japan, that just might be a little too direct. I mean, there's a lot of indirectness with the language and the culture. So I don't know. It's just a really good question, Rachel. And I just think that there's that gesture of directness, and it's not bad, but I don't know if that's flying in Japan. And I saw Jesse's comment that it might be a Western convention.
Yeah, really interesting. Jesse, did you want to say something?
Well, I meant more, I'm sorry, my connection's a little rough today, but I meant more how Western weddings as a concept are taking off in Japan as a fun supplement to your real wedding. And I wonder if maybe, since Japan does have a tendency to borrow from other cultures and make things their own, maybe I could see maybe registries being something you do for your Western wedding, but I honestly don't know exactly how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think also the other thing about things like registries and gift giving, obviously it does change over time. Like we were just talking about weddings in the US that, now, 30, 40 years ago, it maybe was not acceptable to give money as a gift at a wedding at all. And it's increasingly becoming more common, but many older people don't agree with it. And so I'm sure that there's been changes like that, in every culture over time as to what is acceptable in terms of gift giving and not. All right, so we're actually out of time. I did want to thank you all for coming and listening to Mary talk about her research and for engaging in this conversation. I put in the chat the discount code for her book. We'll also email it out. I also wanted to let all of you know, Mary did write a short piece for our Jets on Japan program at the beginning of this year. And I'm going to put it in the chat. So that goes into her research specifically on Japan, and it's a shorter piece than the book. So that could be a great read for everybody if you want to dig a little bit more into this topic. And then also, I do encourage you, if you're not yet a member of USJA, please become a member and or donate to support programs like this. Thank you so much, Mary. Do you have any final remarks?
Thank you, Bahia, and everyone for being active participants. I hope we keep in touch. Please connect.
All right. Well, thank you all. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye. Take care.